My wife became a doctor and celebrated by asking for a divorce on the same day. I signed without a fight and completely disappeared. She laughed about it with her colleagues, calling me dead weight, never imagining I was serious when I left. 3 years later, she tracked me down through public records, leading to 200 missed calls and texts that I had ignored. 8 years. That's how long I spent building someone else's dream while mine gathered dust in a corner. 8 years working double shifts to pay for her private university tuition. 8 years of microwave dinners because she was always studying. 8 years of canceled trips to Miami because she needed to focus on exams. 8 years of hearing, once I graduate, everything will be different. The graduation ceremony was on a Thursday in May in Chicago. I took the day off work specifically to be there. I even bought a new blazer for the occasion. After all, this was supposed to be our moment, our achievement, our future finally beginning. I sat in that packed auditorium watching her walk across the stage. When they called her name, Sarah Vance, I stood up and clapped louder than anyone. 8 years of sacrifice were finally paying off. Or so I thought. The ceremony ended around noon. Families were taking pictures, celebrating, and making plans to grab lunch at some fancy restaurant in River North. I waited by the car while she posed with her classmates, that framed degree in her hands like a golden ticket. When she finally came over to me, I expected a hug, a kiss, maybe even a thank you. Instead, she handed me a manila envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Divorce papers," she said, as if she were talking about the weather. I already signed my part. I looked at the envelope, then at her. She wasn't kidding. There was no emotion in her eyes, no hesitation in her voice. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was planned. "Are you serious right now?" "Completely serious. Look, I don't need you anymore. I have my degree. I have job offers from private hospitals. I have a future. You were helpful during school, but that chapter of my life is over." Helpful. 8 years of my life, reduced to one word. Helpful. So what was I? Some kind of walking scholarship? She shrugged. "You knew what you were getting into. I was clear about my priorities from day one. Medical school came first. Now I'm a doctor, and I want a fresh start. No dead weight." Dead weight. That's what 8 years of marriage meant to her. Dead weight. Her colleagues were starting to gather around us, probably wondering what the intense conversation was about. I recognized a few of them from the rare social events I'd attended over the years. They all knew I was the husband working overtime to pay for their friend's tuition. I opened the envelope and glanced at the papers. Everything was already filled out. She had divided our assets, claimed the SUV she wanted, and even listed the condo in Lincoln Park as exclusively hers, since she would soon be making a doctor's salary. I was getting the bare minimum the law required. "You've really thought this all through, haven't you?" "I'm not stupid. I know what I want." I looked at her classmates watching us, at the celebrating families nearby, at the woman I had supported for 8 years who was now discarding me like a used textbook. Then I did something that shocked everyone, especially her. I pulled a pen from my jacket pocket and signed every page without reading the rest. Right there in the university parking lot in front of her colleagues, I ended our marriage as casually as she had started this conversation. "There you go," I said, handing the papers back to her. "Congratulations on your graduation and your divorce." She just stared, her mouth open. She expected drama, pleading, maybe even anger. What she got was efficient cooperation. "Wait, that's it? You're not going to fight it? Try to talk me out of it?" Why would I fight for someone who just called me dead weight? I turned and walked away from the car, leaving her standing there with her degree in one hand and our signed divorce papers in the other. Behind me, I could hear her colleagues start whispering among themselves. I didn't look back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I just walked out of that parking lot and out of her life completely. The last thing I heard as I turned the corner was one of her classmates asking, "Who was that guy? And why did he just walk away from his own car?" I kept walking. She wanted a fresh start with no dead weight. Perfect. She was about to find out exactly what dead weight I had been carrying all these years. 3 days after the incident in the parking lot, I was gone. Not just from the apartment, but from the city. While she was probably expecting me to come crawling back with apologies and flowers, I was executing the most thorough disappearing act of my life. The beauty of being married to someone who never paid attention to finances was that she had no idea what I actually controlled. She thought she'd get the apartment because she was going to be making doctor money. What she didn't know was that I'd been paying the rent from my personal Bank of America account for the last 2 years, not our joint one. The lease was in my name only. I spent those 3 days liquidating everything that mattered. I closed our joint accounts and moved my half to a new bank she'd never heard of. I canceled the power and water utilities that were in my name. I transferred my Verizon number to a new plan. I even canceled the Netflix subscription she loves so much. By Saturday morning, I was loading my truck with everything that was truly mine. Clothes, tools, my grandmother's antique china that she never appreciated, and my classic rock vinyl collection that she always complained took up space. Asheville, North Carolina, became my destination. Not because I had ties there, but because I didn't. A clean slate in a city where nobody knew my story and no one would think to look for me. The apartment I found was nothing fancy. A 1-bedroom 15 minutes from downtown with views of a parking lot instead of the city skyline she'd always said she wanted. But it was mine. Completely, legally, and financially mine. Getting a job took less than a week. A site manager for a mid-sized construction company specializing in boutique hotels. The pay was good, the hours were reasonable, and nobody asked about my personal life. Perfect. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, she was discovering the reality of her new beginning. The first sign of trouble came when she tried to pay the rent. Turns out, the landlord doesn't accept "I'm going to be a doctor" as a form of payment. When her power was cut off 3 days later, followed by the internet, she finally understood that I hadn't been dead weight after all. I had been the foundation. Her texts started the first week. "We need to talk. This is ridiculous. You can't just disappear." I saw them come in and deleted each one unread. The calls started during the second week, 27 calls in one day. I let every single one go to voicemail, then deleted the messages without listening. If she had something important to say, she could put it in writing through her lawyer. By the third week, she was contacting my old coworkers, trying to get my new contact info. My former boss called to give me a heads up that a very distraught woman claiming to be your wife had shown up at the office. I thanked him for the warning and told him I didn't have a wife. The second month brought real panic. Apparently, she had tried to use me as a reference for a rental application, only to find my old phone number was out of service. She contacted my sister, my parents, even my old college buddy. Every one of them got the same message from me. I don't know anyone by that name. The most desperate move came during the third month. She somehow tracked down my new employer and called the main office, claiming there was a family emergency. My boss took the message and passed it on to me. I told him the truth. I don't have a family emergency because I don't have family with that name. He completely understood and discreetly blocked her number from their system. What she didn't realize was how much I was enjoying my new life. Asheville suited me. The coffee was better. People minded their own business, and no one expected me to sacrifice my present for someone else's future. I joined a hiking group that met every weekend in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I started taking night classes in project management. I even started dating again. Nothing serious, just rediscovering what it felt like to have conversations that didn't revolve around the stress of medical residency and on-call schedules. The woman I met at a bookstore cafe was everything my ex-wife wasn't. Emily had her own career as a graphic designer, paid for her own meals, and actually seemed interested in my thoughts and opinions. When I told her I was recently divorced, she just nodded and said, "Good for you for knowing when it was time to leave." No drama, no analysis of what went wrong, no suggestions of therapy or second chances, just an acceptance that sometimes marriages end, and moving on is the healthiest option. By the 6th month, I'd stopped checking to see if my ex-wife had tried to contact me. I'd built a routine that had nothing to do with her schedule, preferences, or needs. Wake up at 6, strong black coffee while I read the news, work from 7 to 4, gym or hiking after work, dinner with friends, or a quiet evening at home reading. Simple, peaceful, mine. The irony wasn't lost on me that while she was probably telling her colleagues about her new beginning as a newly single doctor, I was the one who was truly living again. No dead weight dragging me down, no one to treat my contributions as temporary conveniences. She wanted a fresh start. I had given her exactly that, plus something she didn't expect, a completely blank page where I used to be. 3 years into my life in Asheville, I was living better than I had in the entire 8 years of my marriage. What I didn't know was that 3 years into her medical career, my ex-wife was discovering that reality has a sense of humor. I found this out later through a mutual acquaintance who couldn't resist sharing the gossip. Apparently, her fresh start hadn't gone according to plan. It turns out that being a newly graduated doctor isn't the instant wealth and prestige she had imagined. Her starting salary as a resident was barely higher than what I was making in construction. Except now, she had over $100,000 in student loan debt hanging over her head, debt that used to be our problem when she needed my signature for the education loans. The condo she'd claimed in the divorce became a financial nightmare within 6 months. Without my income to cover the rent, utilities, and groceries, she blew through her savings before her first resident paycheck even arrived. She ended up taking on 2 roommates just to make ends meet, sharing the space she had so desperately wanted all to herself. Those roommates, according to my source, were not impressed when they found out she'd divorced her husband immediately after graduation, especially when they realized they were basically subsidizing the lifestyle she planned to fund with doctor money that wasn't materializing as fast as she'd hoped. Her work schedule was brutal. 80-hour weeks, overnight shifts, being on call during the weekends. She had planned to enjoy her new freedom. The social life she had envisioned as a successful single doctor became napping between shifts and living off hospital cafeteria food and energy drinks. Meanwhile, I was thriving. The construction company I joined had promoted me to senior project manager. My salary had increased significantly, and I was managing some of the biggest hotel projects in Asheville. I bought a small house with a decent yard, nothing fancy, but all mine. No shared mortgages, no joint financial planning, no asking for permission on purchases. The hiking group had become a core part of my social circle. Every weekend, rain or shine, we were out exploring different trails in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I was in the best shape of my life, had a solid group of friends, and felt genuinely content for the first time in years. The graphic designer, Emily, had become something more serious. We'd been together for over a year, taking things slow and steady. She appreciated that I wasn't rushing into anything given my recent divorce. What she didn't know was how refreshing it was to be with someone who contributed equally to our relationship, instead of treating me like a financial support system. She had her own house, her own car, her own savings account. When we went out to dinner, she insisted on splitting the bill. When I cooked at my place, she brought wine and dessert. When she cooked at hers, I handled cleanup and brought flowers. It all felt balanced and reciprocal. But back to my ex-wife's situation. The breaking point for her, apparently, came during her second year of residency. She had been working a particularly brutal schedule when her car broke down, major engine trouble that would cost more to fix than the car was worth. In the past, this would have been my problem to solve. I would have figured out the financing, negotiated with the mechanics, and even borrowed money from family if needed. Now, she was facing it alone with maxed-out credit cards and no savings. She ended up taking the L train and bus for 3 months before finally qualifying for a high-interest loan for a used car with monthly payments that ate up a significant chunk of her already tight budget. The whole experience apparently triggered some kind of awakening about what she had lost when she discarded her dead weight. That's when the real search began. First, she tried social media, but I had deleted all my old accounts and never created new ones with my real name. Then she contacted every mutual friend we'd ever had, but most of them had taken sides after the divorce, and hers wasn't winning. She hired a private investigator after 2 years of fruitless searching, even paying him a couple $1,000s retainer with money she couldn't afford to spend. He found old addresses, previous employers, and even tracked down family members who told him nothing useful. The breakthrough came when she abused her access to medical databases during her 3rd year of residency. Somehow she got the idea to scan employment records in hospitals across several states, looking for my name in construction-related job descriptions. Apparently, she figured I'd eventually need medical care somewhere, and if I kept the same type of job, she might find a lead. It was a long shot that shouldn't have worked, but it did. A routine physical I'd gotten through my employer's health plan had created a record that popped up in her search. The hospital was in Asheville, and the employment listed was with a major construction firm. She had found me. After 3 years of searching, she finally had a general location and enough information to track me down completely. What she didn't know was that the man she was looking for had evolved far beyond the person she had discarded in that graduation parking lot. I wasn't the same guy who'd worked double shifts to pay her tuition. I wasn't the same man who had accepted being called dead weight and helpful. I was someone who had built a whole new life without her, someone who had proven her assessment of my value to be completely wrong, someone who had moved on so completely that her name rarely crossed my mind. She was about to find out that when you throw something valuable away, you don't get to decide 3 years later that you want it back. The calls started on a Tuesday morning in March. My phone showed 17 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Then the texts began flooding in. I know you're getting these. We need to talk about what happened. I made a mistake, and I want to fix it. Please, just call me back. I deleted every single one. After 3 years of complete silence, I wasn't interested in whatever crisis had suddenly made her remember my existence. The calls continued for 2 weeks. Different numbers now, probably borrowed phones from colleagues or friends. I blocked each one as soon as I identified the pattern. 17 calls on Tuesday, 23 on Wednesday, 31 on Thursday. She was escalating, getting more desperate with each silent day. Then she got creative. My work phone rang on a Friday afternoon. I was on site checking blueprints when the receptionist from our main office called. Hey Jack, there's a woman here claiming to be your wife. She says there's a family emergency and she needs to talk to you right away. What does she look like? The receptionist described her perfectly. My ex-wife had somehow found my employer and driven all the way to Asheville. She was sitting in our lobby at that very moment, probably spinning some story about urgent medical news or a family crisis. Tell her you couldn't reach me and that I'm out of town on a project for the next 2 weeks. Take her contact info and tell her someone will call her back. Got it? Should I actually have someone call her back? No. An hour later, my boss called with an update. She waited in the lobby for 3 hours, repeatedly asking if you'd returned any calls or if you were spotted at different sites. When it became clear you weren't coming, she left her number and a handwritten note. What did the note say? Something about you two needing to discuss your future together. She seemed pretty upset when she realized we weren't going to help her track you down. Thanks for handling that professionally. No problem. We get crazy exes sometimes. I'll flag her info in case she comes back. She didn't come back to the office, but she found other ways to make her presence known. Apparently, she'd spent the weekend driving around Asheville, looking for my truck in subdivisions and restaurant parking lots. One of my hiking buddies called on Sunday night to tell me that a woman matching her description had approached him at a coffee shop, claiming to be looking for her estranged husband and showing him a picture on her phone. Dude, I didn't tell her anything, but she seemed really determined. Said she's been looking for you for 3 years. Thanks for the heads up. If she approaches you again, you've never heard of me. You got it. Monday brought a new strategy. She'd figured out I lived somewhere in Asheville and decided to blanket the city with her search. She posted in neighborhood Facebook groups, community WhatsApp chats, and even on Craigslist's missed connection section, all with the same basic message. Looking for my husband. We lost touch after his medical residency. Please help me reconnect. My girlfriend Emily showed me one of the posts on Tuesday night. We were cooking dinner at my place when she pulled up Facebook on her phone. This is weird. Some woman is posting in all the Asheville groups looking for her husband. She's using a photo that looks like it was taken years ago, and the whole thing sounds desperate. I looked at the post. Sure enough, it was a picture of me from our marriage, probably taken during some dinner I'd forgotten. The caption read like something out of a cheesy romance novel, full of regret and promises to make things right. Sounds like someone who doesn't understand that some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned, I said. My girlfriend nodded. The comments are pretty brutal. Most people are telling her that if her husband wanted to be found, he wouldn't have disappeared so completely. She was right. The comment section was filled with people pointing out the obvious. Men don't just vanish unless they have very good reasons. Several women had shared their own stories about ex-husbands who'd cut all contact, and the consensus was clear. This level of avoidance meant serious damage had been done. Wednesday brought the most desperate move yet. She somehow got my address. I came home from work to find her sitting in her car across the street from my house. She'd been there long enough to attract the neighbors' attention, because Mrs. Carmichael from across the street stopped me as I pulled into my driveway. "Young man, that woman has been parked there since noon, asking everyone who passes if they know you. I told her I'd never seen you in my life." "Thank you, Mrs. Carmichael. If she approaches you again, please feel free to call the police for suspicious behavior." I parked in my garage and went inside through the side door, avoiding any contact with her car. She now knew I was home, which meant the real confrontation was coming. The doorbell started ringing around 7 p.m. Continuous, aggressive rings that lasted for 2 minutes at a time, then banging, then more ringing. I ignored it all, going about my normal evening routine of making dinner and reading. Around 9 p.m. she started yelling through the door. "I know you're in there. I saw your truck in the garage. We need to talk about this like adults. I drove 16 hours to get here. I'm not leaving until you at least hear me out." The neighbors were definitely getting a show. I could see porch lights flicking on up and down the street, people probably wondering what kind of drama was unfolding on their usually quiet block. I called the police non-emergency number. "I'd like to report someone for trespassing and causing a disturbance at my residence. It's my ex-wife, and she's been here for several hours, refusing to leave." The officer who arrived 20 minutes later was professional and efficient. I watched through the window as he spoke with her for about 10 minutes. She was animated, gesturing toward my house, probably explaining her 3-year search and her desperate need to reconnect. He knocked on my door, and I answered. "Sir, the woman claims to be your ex-wife and says she needs to discuss important matters with you. Are you willing to speak with her?" "No, we've been divorced for 3 years, and I have no interest in communicating with her. I would like her removed from my property." "Understood. I'll escort her off the premises and explain that she needs to leave you alone." Through the window, I watched him walk back to her car and have another conversation. This one was clearly firmer, because she got in her car and drove away without another glance at my house. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number 5 minutes later. "The police can't stop me from loving you. I'll wait as long as it takes." I screenshotted the message and added it to the file I'd started keeping. If this escalated further, I wanted documentation of everything. 3 years of silence followed by 2 weeks of desperation. She had found me, but she was about to learn that finding someone and reconnecting with them are two completely different things. She cornered me at Home Depot on a Saturday afternoon. I was loading lumber into my truck for a deck project when I heard her voice behind me. "Please, don't walk away. Just give me 5 minutes." I turned to find her standing 10 feet away, looking like she hadn't slept in days. She was thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes and the frantic energy of someone running on pure desperation. 5 minutes for what? To apologize? To explain? To ask for another chance? I closed the tailgate of the truck and faced her fully. "You had 8 years of chances. You used them all up in a parking lot 3 years ago." I was stressed. School was overwhelming, and I said things I didn't mean. I've regretted it every single day since. "Which part do you regret? Calling me dead weight or finding out that the dead weight was actually keeping your life afloat?" She flinched at that. I never should have said those things. I was scared about starting my career, and I thought I needed to be completely independent to prove I could make it as a doctor. "And how's that working out for you?" Her jaw tightened. "It's been harder than I expected. The hours, the money, everything. I realize now that I gave up the best thing in my life for a career that isn't what I thought it would be." I leaned against my truck and crossed my arms. "So let me get this straight. When you thought you were going to be rich and successful, you threw me away like trash. Now that reality is hit and you're struggling, suddenly I'm the best thing that ever happened to you." "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that. You said it yourself. You didn't need me anymore. I was helpful during school, but that chapter was over. Remember?" She looked down at the ground. "I was wrong." "Yes, you were. About a lot of things. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We had something good before school took over everything. We can have that again." I almost laughed. We never had something good. I had 8 years of being your personal support system while you chased your dream. You had 8 years of free financial and emotional labor while you figured out your career. Those are two completely different relationships. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you what's been fair. You got exactly what you asked for. A fresh start with no dead weight. I got exactly what I deserved after 8 years of being taken for granted. A life where I'm valued. I value you. I've always valued you. You valued what I provided. There's a difference. She moved closer, and I could see tears starting to form in her eyes. I love you. I've always loved you. I just got my priorities mixed up. No, you didn't. You were honest. For the first time in 8 years, you told me exactly what you thought of me and our marriage. The only thing that's changed is your circumstances. People change. I've changed. Have you? Or are you just desperate because being an adult is harder than you expected? She was silent for a long moment, then tried a different approach. What can I do to prove I'm different now? Nothing, because I'm different now too. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not the same man you discarded 3 years ago. That guy who worked double shifts to pay your tuition, he's gone. The guy who accepted being called dead weight and helpful doesn't exist anymore. You're talking to someone else entirely. I don't believe that. People don't just become different people. Sure they do, especially when they're forced to rebuild their entire life from scratch. You want to know what I've learned in the last 3 years? She nodded. I learned that I'm actually pretty good company when I'm not constantly worried about someone else's stress levels. I learned that I have interests and hobbies that don't revolve around residency schedules. I learned what it feels like to have conversations that don't end with someone complaining about attendings, rotations, or board exams. Her face grew redder with each point I made. I learned that when you date someone who has their own career and their own money, relationships become a partnership instead of a charity. I learned that mutual respect is actually possible when both people contribute equally. Are you seeing someone? I'm engaged to someone. The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually stumbled back and put a hand to her chest. Engaged? 3 months ago. We're getting married in September. But we're still married. No, we're not. You divorced me, remember? Signed papers and everything. Handled very efficiently. I mean, we could still, if you wanted to try again. I don't want to try again. I want to move forward with someone who chose me when she had options, not someone who only wants me back because her other options didn't work out. She was openly crying now. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. How was it supposed to go? You were supposed to show up after 3 years, apologize for treating me like dirt, and I was supposed to gratefully welcome you back into my life? Yes, no, I don't know. I just thought if I could find you and explain. You thought I'd just be sitting around waiting for you to realize your mistake. Like my life was on pause until you decided you needed me again. She didn't answer, but the look on her face confirmed exactly what she'd been thinking. Here's the thing you never understood about me, I said. I don't wait around for people to figure out my worth. When you threw me away, I took you at your word and moved on completely. The man you're looking for is marrying someone who appreciated him from day one. I could appreciate you now. Too late. Someone else already does. I opened my truck door and got in. She just stood there watching me, probably waiting for me to change my mind or offer some kind of hope for reconciliation. Instead, I rolled down the window and gave her one last piece of advice. Next time you find something valuable, try not to throw it away just because you think you found something better. Most people only get one chance to make that mistake. I drove away, leaving her standing in the Home Depot parking lot with the same shocked expression she'd had 3 years ago when I signed the divorce papers. The difference was, this time, she understood exactly what she had lost. 2 weeks after the Home Depot encounter, she made one last desperate move. She showed up at my workplace again, this time with a different story. She told our receptionist she was a doctor with urgent medical information about my health that required immediate discussion. My boss called me into his office. Your ex is back. This time she's claiming a medical emergency. I should call security. Actually, let me handle this personally. I walked out to the lobby where she was waiting, still in scrubs from what was likely an overnight shift. She looked even worse than before, as if she'd been surviving on nothing but coffee and false hope. Medical emergency? I asked. I needed to see you. And you thought impersonating a doctor with urgent health information was the appropriate way to do that? I am a doctor. You're also a liar. There's no medical emergency, is there? She shook her head, tears starting again. This is what's going to happen, I said. I'm going to give you 2 things, and then this is over for good. I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket. First, this is a restraining order. Any further contact from you, direct or indirect, becomes a legal matter. That includes showing up at my work, my home, contacting my friends, or creating fake emergencies. Her hands trembled as she took the envelope. Second, this is for you. I handed her a wedding invitation. My name, Jack, and my fiancée's name, Emily, were printed in elegant script, along with the September date and the venue information in Asheville. I want you to understand that I'm not just moving on from you. I am completely moved on. The life I am building has nothing to do with the life we had together. She stared at the invitation like it might disappear if she blinked. My fiancée knows about you. She knows about our marriage, our divorce, and your recent attempt to reconnect. She's not threatened by you because she understands something you never did. What's that? That when someone chooses you every day, instead of just keeping you around until something better comes along, it creates a completely different kind of relationship. Security had arrived and was waiting nearby, probably called by the receptionist when she realized what was happening. These gentlemen are going to escort you to your car. If I see you again, if I hear from you again, if you contact anyone in my life again, the next conversation will be with my lawyer and the police. She was crying harder now, clutching the restraining order and the wedding invitation. I know I made mistakes, but this feels cruel. Cruel would be giving you false hope, letting you think there was a chance, or pretending that 3 years of rebuilding my life could be erased with an apology. This is honest. I love you. I know you think you do, but love isn't something you discover when you're desperate. Love is what you nurture when you have choices. Security stepped forward, and she let them guide her toward the exit. At the door, she turned one last time. Will you ever forgive me? I already have, I said. That's why I was able to move on completely. She left, and I never saw her again. 6 months later, I married my fiancée in a small ceremony surrounded by people who had watched me build a new life from nothing. During my vows, I promised to choose her every day, not just when it was convenient. She promised the same. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's living so well that the people who threw you away realize they gave away something irreplaceable. My ex-wife wanted a fresh start with no dead weight. I gave her exactly that and built something better than anything we ever had together. She got what she asked for. I got what I deserved. We were both finally free.